Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Here are the top stories we're tracking for you on Thursday, the 28th of January. Myanmar holds last parliament session under Thein Sein's government. Sri Lankan Prime Minister doesn't rule out foreign judges in war crime probe. And Britain warns sanctions against Maldives officials. And now for all the details. Afghanistan has failed in achieving significant human rights reforms in 2015, the Human Rights Watch has said. The watchdog report mentions that little progress was made by the Afghan government to keep abusive militias in control, reducing corruption and promoting women's rights.
In its report, Human Rights Watch stated that President Ashraf Ghani government's reform efforts were undermined by internal divisions and conflicts with local strongmen and power brokers. Afghanistan's national unity government squandered important opportunities to tackle serious human rights problems. Patricia Gossman, senior Afghanistan researcher at Human Rights Watch, said in a statement, "The government jeopardized fundamental rights protection as fight against the Taliban escalated in 2015, notably by expanding the Afghan local police, which has records of rape, extortion and unlawful killings," the report stated. Despite an action plan laid down to eliminate such torture by armed forces, the cases of atrocities increased in 2015 and there were no reported investigations or prosecutions. The Human Rights Watch also expressed concern over the growing Taliban insurgency in the country, in which hundreds of civilians have been killed. According to the report, both President Ghani and Afghan CEO Abdullah failed to take steps to improve enforcement of the law on the elimination of violence against women and to stop prosecutions of so-called moral crimes.
The Pentagon has nominated Lieutenant General John Nicholson as the new commander of Operation Resolute Support, the ongoing U.S. operation in Afghanistan. Nicholson, the current head of NATO's Allied Land Command in Turkey and a veteran of multiple deployments in Afghanistan, would replace General John Campbell in the role. Nicholson's selection must be confirmed by the Senate. The transition comes amid growing concern about the deteriorating security situation in Afghanistan, where Taliban militants have increased attacks, causing large number of casualties among Afghan troops and civilians. Apart from the Taliban, the Islamic State affiliates locally known as Daesh have made some inroads. Moving on to news from India, Indian Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar on Thursday called for greater role of women in the maritime organisation. The Indian government has been seeking for more women participation in defence services as a step towards national objective of empowering women. A report.
The Indian Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar hailed the Indian Coast Guard organisation for recently inducting women as pilots and observers of Indian Coast Guard aircraft. He also lauded the organisation for imparting training to a batch of 10 women officers to operate a hovercraft. Women personnel constitute 10% of the total strength of the force, which guards the country's maritime boundary. Parrikar, however, urged the Coast Guard to push more for women participation in combat operations and said that the focus needs to be put on facilitating it.
One of the areas that service would need to focus on would be to facilitate greater role of women in the organization. I am aware that women constitute about 10% of the total strength of officers in the Coast Guard. It is heartening to note that women officers have been employed as pilots and observers on Coast Guard aircraft. This is a significant step towards the national objective of empowerment of women and realization of their potential in overall growth, progress and well-being of the country.
The Indian government has been considering for larger role for women in combat operations across the defence services. Last year, it had given a nod to induct women as fighter pilots in the Indian Air Force.
There is no respite for lady health workers in Pakistan-administered Kashmir who have not been paid their salaries for past